Hello and welcome. What is a query? In SQL, a query is an inquiry into the database using the select statement. So a query can be used to extract data from a database table. Also, a query can also be referred to as an SQL or SQL statement. So when you're talking about query, you're also referring to an SQL or SQL statement. So most of the actions you perform on a database table, you'll be doing it using state SQL statements or queries. A query can be very basic. It can also be quite complex, depending on your level of skill. These are the basic parts of a query. So a query begins with the word select, followed by the name of the column. So if you had several columns you want to get data from, you specify the column here. If you don't want to specify a column and you want data to be returned from all the columns and you specify that using the asterisk. So this asterisk means return every column and every row from the specified table. So in the select, you specify the columns or all the columns using the asterisk. The second keyword you need to specify is from. The query needs to know what table you are getting the data from. So from is where you specify the table. Then where, you need to apply a filter. Sometimes you may want to update a record or delete a record, and you don't want all the records from that table deleted. So you use the where clause to act as a filter so that only the conditions that are specified within the where clause is acted upon. Another keyword that is used in a query is the order by clause. It's called a clause. That means when you try to retrieve data, you can also specify the order in which the data is returned from the table. For example, you can specify ascending order or descending order. Most SQL statements end with a semicolon. The semicolon is quite important because it tells the query that's the end of that particular query. So you may have several queries written, but if you don't separate them with a semicolon, the query might get confused. So it would not know which one to start or where which ones ended. So it's very important to use your semicolon at the end of a query. I have got my connection to the virtual labs open, so I'm going to illustrate a simple query here. I want to identify all the employees in a database table. So the schema I'm going to go for is this schema here called human resources, and the table I'm going to target is the employee table. So I'll begin my query with the word select, followed by the asterisk. I'm using the asterisk because I want all the columns and all the rows returned. So next line will be from. From is where I specify the database schema and the table. So I type in human resources. Let's try that again. Human resources. So human resources is the schema, and then employee is the table. The reason I've got these squiggly red lines here is that I have got the wrong database selected. If you look in this here, I've got master. So that means this doesn't recognize that. Hence, it's got these squiggly lines. It's saying, hey, come on, we haven't got this in this database. So what I need to do is drop down and select the AdventureWorks. That should disappear. You notice it has picked up this schema and the table. So I put a semicolon there, which indicates that's the end of my query. Next thing I need to do is execute it, and you do that pressing this execute button, and it will return all the records. So you see there is returned all the records from this table. Notice I have not used any filters. The where clause is a filter, and I've not also ordered by. I've just done a basic query to return all the columns and all the table and all the rows from this table here. So you can see these going horizontal are all columns, and the records going down are all known as rows. What I can do also, I can specify. Okay, I can specify certain columns. For example, I can remove the asterisk and specify, say, this column here called login ID, or say login ID. When you're typing, you're given a list of suggestions. This is known as IntelliSync. So it gives you an idea of what you're trying to type. So that's what I want. I put it there. So if I want to select login ID, that's one column. You separate one column from another with a comma. So I picked up one column, and the next one I'm going to do is organization. No, I'll go for business entity ID. Notice that it's picked that up. Okay, so I've selected two columns from this table, employees table, and I could act a filter. The where clause is a filter because I don't want everything returned. So I can say where the organization level equals to 3. Organizational level. Okay, so I've used the where clause here to specify a criteria. So by using the where filter here, I am going to reduce what records are returned. All right, so if you notice the way these are the output when everything was selected, but now I've used the where clause to restrict to 2 columns and also set a criteria to filter it. So let me execute this, and you can see the records returned are smaller because I've specified just 2 columns, login ID, business entity ID, and I've also specified a criteria using the where clause. Hence it has returned a lesser amount of record than the previous. So in this lecture, we were able to write a basic query using the select, the from, and the where keywords. Thank you so much for your time. Bye for now.